Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Ottawa, the capital of Canada, on March 4th, 2026. Yesterday, following a classified briefing on the Iran war, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren had this to say to her constituents.
After a classified briefing on Iran, and here's what I can say. It is so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it either. Like a lot of you, I am really angry. I am angry at what Donald Trump is doing, and I feel grief for those already killed in this unnecessary conflict.
Of course, the senator is quite right to say that a lot of Americans are angry. A poll just came out showing that only 27% of Americans support this travesty, whereas 43% oppose it. The rest haven't yet formed a view. And that is a media environment which is very much pro-war. So just how badly is this debacle going for the United States and Israel? Well, in my opinion, the first 5 days of this war have been an unmitigated catastrophe for the Trump and Netanyahu regimes. In this episode, I'll explain why, but before I get into the reasons for expressing that view, I just want to remind you, if you find this episode to be useful, informative, please like and share this video. And if you're not already a subscriber of Reason to Resist, please become one and help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism. We just went over 131,000 subscribers, and our goal is to get to 200,000 by the summer. Now, let's get into it. So within the past 48 hours, video emerged of a major fire at the sprawling United States Embassy in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. And here is some of that imagery. Now, yesterday, the Washington Post published an article about what happened at the United States Embassy. And here you can see a piece entitled CIA Station in Saudi Capital Hit in Drone Attack. That's right, folks, the CIA station at the embassy. According to the Post, no embassy personnel were killed, but an internal State Department alert obtained by the Washington Post said the drone attack collapsed, that's the word it used, part of the embassy's roof and contaminated the inside with smoke. The notice said the embassy sustained structural damage and personnel continue to shelter in place. Now, this piece goes to great lengths to downplay the significance of the incident. It quotes, for example, CIA officials who say that the agency is accustomed to such disruptions and describes the attack as a symbolic win for Iran's military. But I would beg to differ about the significance of this attack. Let us recall that we're talking here about the United States Embassy in the capital of Saudi Arabia, which is extraordinarily important to U.S. foreign policy, this country. And this particular embassy, therefore, exercises an outsized importance in the formulation and implementation of that policy. And in particular, you would think not only that this entire facility would be well protected by the Americans, particularly from aerial attack, but that the CIA section would be extraordinarily sensitive to the Americans, and that they would be willing, able, and ready to repel any attempt to strike the embassy, or in particular the CIA section. So the fact that the Iranian military was able to hit this with a drone, which is relatively slow moving, it's one of the easier aerial threats for an air defense system, particularly those that are vaunted to be the finest in the world by the US military, to neutralize. But clearly, in fact, if this was in fact a strike by an Iranian drone or drones, and that is what the Washington Post is being told by knowledgeable sources, there was a massive failure here. And what that says loudly and clearly is that the U.S. is not only rather incapable of protecting its allies in the region, like Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, it can't even protect from a drone shot from a long distance, I might add. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. That's where Iran is situated relative to Riyadh. They can't even protect this facility from a drone strike. And I therefore would suggest that this is going to be something that is going to be a little bit of an earthquake in terms of the standing and the prestige of the United States military and intelligence agencies in West Asia. Now, 2 other U.S. embassies in the region are closed currently, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon and the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. That too is a blow, I would suggest, to the prestige of the U.S., which likes to hold itself out as having the finest intelligence agencies in the world and the mightiest military that humanity has ever seen. And meanwhile, the U.S. consulate in Dubai appears also to have come under attack. And here is a video of the aftermath of that attack. Now, I can say from personal experience that the United States and Israel and Washington's Arab proxies are very, very sensitive about their embassies in the region. Why do I say that? Because in the fall of last year, I was in Amman, Jordan. My purpose in going there was to cross the Allenby Bridge and go into occupied Palestine, but I was prevented from doing that by the genocidal entity's border police. They said that because I have so often criticized Israel that I was deemed to be a security threat, and sadly they would not let me in during this time of genocide. So I ended up spending a few days in Amman. I decided to go to the U.S. Embassy and the Israeli Embassy to shoot video, which would be part of a report I plan to make about the extent of the U.S.-Israeli control over the Jordanian government and the Jordanian state. And I thought that these embassies would make a good backdrop to my report. So I went to the U.S. Embassy, and I managed to film a video there. I was kind of discreet about it, so maybe people didn't notice me, but I managed to shoot a video there, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And then I got in a rental car, and I drove to the Israeli Embassy, which was in another part of Amman. And as soon as I pulled out my camera there, I was arrested on the spot. I was surrounded by, at one point, there were 18 police officers surrounding me, including police officers in civilian clothing. And then they threw me in the back of a police vehicle, and they took me to the local precinct. Actually, they took me to the precinct where there was an intelligence official for me to be interrogated. And I had to spend part of that day in a jail cell. And they took my phone. Ultimately, when I demanded to speak to the Canadian Embassy for consular services, after having held me in a jail cell for some time that day, they let me go, but they took my cell phone and they deleted the video that I had started to shoot outside the Israeli Embassy. When I say outside the Israeli Embassy, I was like 150 meters away, something like that. I wasn't standing near the door. And the thing was actually closed. I found out later it had been vacated by embassy staff. That's what a police officer told me. In any case, I retained the video of the U.S. Embassy, and here's a little bit of that video. As you can see, that's a pretty damn big embassy, much bigger than most embassies. And that, in my experience, has been par for the course traveling through West Asia. Whenever I see an American or a British embassy or a French embassy there, particularly the American embassies. They're massive. And I really much doubt that these buildings, these facilities are strictly for, or even primarily for, diplomatic purposes. Based on what I've been able to glean, these U.S. embassies, particularly in this part of the world, undoubtedly house significant number of military and intelligence personnel who gather intelligence used by the United States oftentimes to facilitate its crimes in the region. Now, not only has Iran disrupted U.S. embassies and their intelligence gathering operations, but it has also disrupted U.S. military communications in the region. And how do we know that? Because that was the subject of a New York Times article. I think it was published yesterday. And the New York Times, of course, is no friend of the Iranian government. And here is the headline from that article: Iran strikes U.S. military communication infrastructure in the Middle East. Satellite images show damage near vital equipment on sites in at least 5 countries. And then the article begins: Iranian strikes conducted over the weekend and on Monday damaged structures that are part of or near communication and radar systems on at least 7 U.S. military sites across the Middle East, according to a New York Times analysis of satellite imagery and verified videos. The article goes on to say this: Bahrain, a video verified by the Times showed that an Iranian one-way attack drone struck a radome, that's a radar, on Saturday in the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Manama, Bahrain. The base is the U.S. primary hub for coordinating naval operations in the Middle East, so it's a very important base. Satellite imagery taken of the headquarters the following day showed that at least 1 additional radome was destroyed. The 2 demolished structures were ANGSC-52B SATCOM terminals, which play a key role in facilitating high-capacity and near real-time communication for the U.S. military. Well, that sounds like a significant loss. Then it says, in Qatar, satellite imagery of Al Udaid Air Base in Qatar, taken on Sunday afternoon, showed that a tent surrounded by satellite dishes had been destroyed and some of the dishes most likely damaged. Kuwait, satellite imagery of Camp Arifjan in Kuwait shows that by Sunday morning, at least 3 radomes had been damaged or destroyed. So we're talking here less than 48 hours, folks, after this criminal war was launched by the U.S. and Israel. And it goes on to say about the Kuwait situation that 50 miles northeast at the Ali Al-Salam Air Base in Kuwait, at least 6 buildings or structures adjacent to satellite communications infrastructure were damaged or destroyed, according to imagery captured on Sunday. Then in Saudi Arabia, on Saturday night, the IRGC announced that the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia had been targeted with missiles and drones. The following morning, satellite imagery captured a mile-long smoke plume rising from a building connected to the site. Another satellite image captured on Tuesday showed the structure was largely destroyed. Just pausing there, notice how the satellite imagery confirmed what the Iranian military was saying. And it's been my experience throughout this that, I can't say on all occasions, but I have generally found that when there has been satellite imagery published, it tends to confirm what the Iranian military has said about its attacks. So going on here, the article then talks about the United Arab Emirates. And there it says low-resolution satellite imagery captured at a military installation just outside Al-Ruwais in the UAE on Sunday shows several structures were damaged. A radar system known as AN-TPY-2, which is used to detect and track ballistic missiles and is crucial to coordinating missile interception, appears to have been stationed next to one of the buildings that was hit since June of last year. It's unclear from the imagery if the radar system itself was damaged. And if I didn't know any better, I would say that what the Iranians are focusing on doing in the initial stages of this war is blinding the air defense systems of the United States and Israel by taking out radars and other hardware that is used in order to detect incoming missiles and ensure their interception by these air defense systems. Now, not only are these systems very important to the defense of military assets and other strategically important sites for the United States and Israel in this region, but they are also extraordinarily expensive. And here is an account which was published on one of the Telegram channels, resistance Telegram channels that I follow, of the cost. And I've seen other reports which are consistent with what is said here, listing the pieces that have been damaged or destroyed by the Iranian military since this war began on Saturday. The AN/FPS-132, $1.1 billion over-the-horizon early warning ballistic missile defense and space surveillance radar at Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base. Fed, THAAD, Patriot, Arrow, and David Sling interceptors tracking and targeting data wiped out the first day. Then AN/GSC-52B times 2. So 2 of these things were taking out $10 million apiece SATCOM terminals at U.S. naval support activity in Bahrain. These were the 5th Fleet's regional C-51 backbone, allowing for high bandwidth, near real-time communications. Their loss degrades everything from drone video feeds to missile defense, with a switch to backups costing firing batteries critical seconds, also gone on day 1. And then AN/TPY-2, $400 to $500 million X-band fire control radar, providing THAAD, other air defense and Navy warships surveillance and tracking data, missile interceptors used to engage threats from the ascent to terminal descent phases. 2 AN/TPY-2s at UAE's Al Ruwais base destroyed. So not only has the capacity of the Americans and the Israelis to detect, track, and intercept missiles and drones been degraded, but the loss of these systems has cost a considerable amount of money to the United States. And as I say, this all happened within the first day or two of this war. Clearly, it was a top priority for the Iranian military to compromise the ability of the United States and Israel to intercept missiles, and it seems like they've made considerable progress in that regard. Now, Iranian forces have used cheap but effective drones to cause much of the damage sustained by these military facilities, embassies, and consulates. On Sunday, the Wall Street Journal published an article that described the immense challenge of dealing with Iran's drones. Now, according to this article that I put up on the screen here, and I'm quoting, Gulf countries' proximity to Iran means those countries have less time to prepare for incoming drones. The attacks have triggered global travel chaos and threatened to cause a surge in oil prices, demonstrating Iran's strategy of hitting the soft underbelly of the global economy. Iran is attempting to internationalize the conflict by piling pressure on U.S. allies in the Gulf and inflicting economic pain on the West, analysts say. Iran has so far fired 541 drones at the UAE, 283 drones at Kuwait, 9 drones and 136 Shahids at Bahrain. I believe that's the advanced form of the most advanced, or one of the most advanced forms of Iranian drone. 12 drones at Qatar and dozens of drones at Jordan, in addition to hundreds of missiles launched at those countries. Israel separately said it intercepted over 50 Iranian drones, an easier feat since it is further away from Iran and takes much longer for the drones to get there. Now, here's a video of a successful Iranian drone strike today on the American Bahraini military base in the Al-Shakar region of Bahrain. Just bear with me 1 second. Looks to me that thing packs quite a punch, even though its warhead is not particularly large. On top of all that, the U.S. and Israel consider to lose valuable military assets used to prosecute offensive operations. Here is a video published this morning, which appears to show a warplane crashing to the earth after having been damaged by an air defense missile.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. سرنگونی یک فروند جنگنده صهیونیستی امریکایی در کوههای شمال لواسان توسط پدافند قدرتمند رزمندگان جمهوری اسلامی ایران بعد از مسیر برگشت بمباران شرق تهران.
Now, Israeli media report that this indeed was a U.S. warplane. This is a screenshot from a post by Yedioth Ahronoth, a major Israeli newspaper, and you'll see that it says an American fighter jet was shot down in the northern part of Tehran city by the air defense of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't know for sure that that's in fact what happened. The story may change as more information emerges, but at this stage, that is the best information that we have about what happened in the skies over Tehran this morning. Now, in addition, Iranian forces continue to shoot down in large numbers the best drones in the arsenals of the US and Israel. I've seen numerous videos of drones falling from the sky, and you can tell from their shape that they are they're usually either MQ-9 drones from the American Air Force or their Hermes drones from the Israeli Air Force. And here you can see a photograph published in the last day or two by the Iranian military of what appears to be an Israeli Hermes drone, which is pretty much intact. And the post by the military about this incident is somewhat cagey, and understandably so, about how exactly they brought it down. Judging by its relatively good condition, it may be that they brought it down by means of electronic warfare rather than by any kind of a missile. And the Iranian military also published this photograph of what it said were missiles, offensive missiles, under the drone's wings or somewhere else in the body of the drone, which had not been fired. This was, armed, this drone, but it had not yet dispatched its missiles. And I can imagine easily, if the Iranian military didn't already have intact samples of these weapons and of this drone, they will study it carefully. They are very adept and scientifically advanced, as we have seen, and potentially re-engineer these weapons for their own purposes. Now, there's no question that despite these successes, Iran continues to take severe blows, particularly in its civilian population. The Israeli war criminals and their U.S. partners are virtually carpet bombing Tehran based on images I've seen. But new videos suggest that the successes that they have claimed, and again, I'm not denying that they have had genuine successes, but that the successes they've claimed to have had were either, in some cases, faked or greatly exaggerated. So, for example, the Israelis published a video in which they boasted about destroying an Iranian helicopter in a precise strike. So take a look at this doozy. Now, watch this a second time, and I'll ask you, if you haven't already noticed something very odd about this video. Look at where the rotors of this supposed helicopter are before the strike, and then look at where they are after the strike, and ask yourself if it looks like they've moved even an inch. Let's watch it again. So, folks, you don't need to be a physicist or an expert in satellite imagery analysis to know that any helicopter that took a blow of that nature, that was destroyed in a precise strike, the rotors would certainly have moved. They would have been rattled, and one or more of them might have fallen right off the helicopter. It was blown to smithereens in the front part. But in fact, they didn't even move. Not at all. So what appears to have happened here is that the Israelis struck a painting on the tarmac, which was designed to fool them and to cause them to waste precision munition. And, what I find comical about all of this, I can certainly understand, somebody in the heat of battle making a mistake and firing an expensive munition at this painting on the ground. The part that just boggles my mind is that the so-called experts within the Israeli military, when they studied this image, presumably they have people who are supposed to be experts in the analysis of satellite imagery, didn't notice that this thing that they struck was not behaving at all like a real helicopter, and that the most plausible interpretation of the image was that they had basically blown a hole into the ground around which a helicopter had been painted. Now, this is not the only evidence of this kind of shenanigan. Here is another video of the Iranians, of the Israelis supposedly striking, or it might be the Americans, I'm not sure who published this one, an Iranian warplane, so to speak, on the ground. So again, you notice, watch the cone, the nose cone of this so-called warplane, both before and after the strike. And again, it doesn't move at all. Okay, so there's no way in hell that is actually a warplane. That is the image of a warplane painted on top of a hard surface. And again, the Americans saw fit to publish this video without noticing that this object that was struck was essentially defying the laws of physics. And there's more. There was some interesting commentary today on a resistance Telegram channel. The U.S. military has been publishing what it says are videos of what it says are strikes on drones, on Iranian drones that have been parked outside ready for launch. And according to this post, Yuri Lamin, a leading researcher at the Center for Analysis of Strategies and Technologies, commented on the U.S. Central Command's video of the destruction of Shahed drones. And he said, in this video from CENTCOM, it seems that only one real Shahed 136 is visible in the middle of the video. The rest are cheap decoys, even without wingtips. For comparison, in the first screenshot, there are several decoys. In the second, a real Shahed 136. Now, how many overpriced munitions have these clowns wasted on these images or decoys? And how much have they inflated their supposed successes on the battlefield? Those are two very real questions and open questions. Now, I've seen very little new footage of missile or drone strikes in Israel. This video, published by resistance channels, apparently shows an Iranian missile strike in Israel last night. Now, according to the poster of this particular video, the missile struck in or near Tel Aviv. We didn't see a blast, an impact blast, because at the very end it disappears behind a mountain. But it does look like that missile was not intercepted. I have no footage to offer you of the impact or the explosion, if any. Now, I did find, by the way, in my review of the of available evidence about missile strikes on Israel, a report that I had missed on the first day of the war, and this is of a journalist, a Western journalist, reporting from Tel Aviv within the first 24 hours of the missile exchanges.
You can see here the site of a direct impact in Tel Aviv. First responders are currently digging through the debris of the building behind me. They just pulled 2 civilians out. There were a number of injuries at this location, but the ongoing ballistic missile fire is making it incredibly difficult for these first responders to look for survivors, because every time the siren goes off, they have to rush into a nearby shelter and get underground. But you see here the massive amount of destruction to this building, a residential block. And they are bringing dogs in. There are still firefighters on the scene putting out the blaze inside the building. And they're using megaphones to call out to see if there are any survivors still trapped under the debris. This is the most significant impact since the war erupted early this morning with the Israeli strikes and American strikes against Iran.
Now, as I've commented previously, it seems like the only videos that get out of that survive or are released despite Israel's very strict military censorship regime. They'll throw you in jail if you publish a damaged site and without the consent of the government. So it is quite strict, and they published, as we reported yesterday, they arrested, the Israelis did, 2 CNN Turkish journalists for filming a report outside the Israeli military's HQ. So very little does get out, and what does get out consistently is sites of an apparently civilian nature. I've seen not one video so far. I've seen many videos of damage inside Israel, in Beersheba, in Jerusalem, in Haifa, you name it. I have not seen a single video of damage to a military base or to some kind of military facility that is not situated on a military base. And I think that's quite a conscious strategy on the part of the Israelis. What they let out is designed to convey the impression that the Iranians are only hitting or are primarily hitting civilian areas. They don't want you to know that Iran is unquestionably attacking repeatedly Israeli military bases and other Israeli military facilities. So we have to be careful about how we interpret the evidence that's available to us, because it is extremely selective evidence. Now, another important development is that for the first time in 14 months, the Lebanese resistance, or Hezbollah, has published a video of a military operation it mounted in the last 24 hours or so. So what you saw there on that hilltop was a military base, an Israeli military base in northern occupied Palestine. Just pausing there, I don't read Arabic, but I think what they're showing you there is a second target that is going to be targeted with other projectiles. And that looks to me like a launcher of missiles or rockets, not drones. And notice the photograph of the now deceased Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei. Now, I didn't count that the number of launches there, but it looked like a salvo of about 12 or perhaps even more rockets or missiles, which is likely to consume anywhere from 25 to 40 interceptors, because typically, in order to have a reasonably good chance of taking down a missile or rocket, you need to file 2 interceptors at least at the missile or rocket. So that means that whether or not these missiles and drones are actually hitting targets and doing damage to Israel's infrastructure or to its military assets, they are, by joining the fray and regularly, several times a day, firing drones and missiles into Israel, helping to deplete Israel's already very limited and low stocks of interceptor missiles. But that's not the only advantage to the axis of resistance of these attacks by Hezbollah from Lebanon. There's also the economic disruption, and that occurs even if there isn't significant damage resulting from the launch, because every time there is a launch, the Israelis will sound the sirens in the area where the missiles or drones are expected to land, and people then rush to their bunkers, their nearest bunker, and they can spend anywhere from 30 minutes to hours in there. And it is very hard for a lot of people, not all. Some can go in there with their laptops and continue to do their work, but a lot of people can't work they can't do their jobs off of a computer device in a bunker. And so you're getting economic disruption several times a day just because of the efforts of Hezbollah. So that's a second benefit to the resistance and a disadvantage to the target of the attacks. And finally, of course, there's a psychological impact of constantly having to, stop whatever it is that you're doing and rush off to a bunker to be secure from shrapnel or any explosion that occurs when impact is made. Now, my sense is that Iran at this time is focusing its attacks on U.S. military and intelligence facilities in the Gulf, and is allowing Hezbollah to take the lead in depleting Israel's air defense systems through its drone and rocket attacks. By degrading U.S. radar and intelligence gathering capabilities, while depletion of these air defense interceptor missiles is ongoing, Iranian forces are setting the stage for some very destructive missile attacks using Iran's better missiles in subsequent phases of the war. Ultimately, the military aspects of this war might prove to be considerably less important to its outcome than the economic aspects. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, an icon of the British corporate press, just published a blistering article on the effects this war is having on oil and gas markets. I've been following, well, not too closely, but I've known of Ambrose Evans Pritchard for a long time. When I was in an earlier part of my legal career, when I was working for a Wall Street law firm in Paris, I read a lot of his articles because he was reputed to be one of the better analysts of capital markets, which was something that I was very interested in from a professional perspective in the European press. He's been writing for a long time. He has a lot of contacts, pretty good level of sophistication about how financial markets operate. And so for this man to be writing an article like this about Trump's war on Iran, that is, I would suggest, significant in terms of where all of this is heading, at least from an economic perspective. Now, I'm going to read to you some portions of this article, which I think are quite eyebrow-raising and should be of great concern to those who are wondering where this is all heading. So it begins with this: "It is more than a little careless for Donald Trump to hurl the Middle East into chaos without first filling up the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Stocks are near their lowest level in 40 years. He launched the biggest war, potentially, in West Asia since the end of the Second World War. And despite its primordial importance to the oil and gas markets globally, he did this at a time when the Strategic Petroleum Reserve of the United States was near its lowest level in 40 years. And he goes on, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, he writes, "It is even more careless to launch this war of choice when the Gulf's oil industry lacks the pipeline infrastructure to replace dependence on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and when there is zero spare capacity in the rest of the world." Jim Burkhart, the head of oil markets at S&P Global Energy, said the war threatens to set off the worst oil supply crisis of the modern age, outstripping even the Arab oil embargo of 1973. I lived through that, by the way. That was quite a doozy. Or the Gulf War in 1990. Never before has Iran shut down the choke point controlling a fifth of the world's oil and seaborne gas supply. If the reduction in tanker traffic continues for a week or so, he's quoting here Ambrose Evans Pritchard, an expert in the market. If the reduction in tanker traffic continues for a week or so, it will be historic. Beyond that, it would be epochal for the oil market. Not a single tanker of liquefied natural gas has run the gauntlet through the strait since the war began. The cargo tracking group Vortexa warned that there is no way of replacing the supply from Qatar. Destruction in the LNG market will be immediate and immense, it said. Wow. I can tell you, these people are not normally prone to hyperbole. Later on in the article, Ambrose Evans Pritchard writes, Goldman Sachs says global LNG prices could double again from here to 25 per million British thermal units. Should that happen, Europe faces a ruinous bill refilling its heavily depleted gas stocks in time for next winter, with much of the windfall revenue going to U.S. shale gas frackers and liquefaction companies. And he asks, do we gnash our teeth or scream? And then he says, experts know that the precise destination of each ship scarcely matters for the global price. Oil and LNG gas are fungible commodities subject to instant arbitrage on electronic markets. But it would be very hard for Trump to explain to his MAGA base why he has got America entangled in a war where U.S. warships must escort tankers going to Shanghai. So what he's talking about here is this post that Trump put out in the last 24 to 48 hours. You know, there's a crisis in oil and gas transportation in West Asia now because insurers won't insure. And so he or the insurance has become prohibitively expensive if it's available at all. So he's directed a federal entity to provide reasonably priced insurance to these maritime shippers and has said that the U.S. Navy will begin to escort oil tankers and LNG tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is about 54 kilometers at its narrowest point. So as I've commented previously, if he were to do this, send naval vessels alongside these oil tankers and LNG tankers, they would basically be sitting ducks for Iran's drones, and they would have very, very little time to react to an incoming drone because the drone would be launched from a point that is so close to them. And I think, frankly, the Iranians would probably love it if Trump were to start sending high-priced, sophisticated naval vessels to accompany, oil tankers and LNG tankers through this very, very narrow strait. And he's saying, moreover, a lot of those oil tankers and LNG tankers are going to China. So if we lose a naval vessel, or if the U.S. loses a naval vessel trying to protect them, how is Trump going to explain to his base why that now lost naval vessel was accompanying a tanker whose destination was the primary rival of the United States? Probably not something that's going to go down well with the MAGA base. And the article goes on, says, the problem is larger than the Strait of Hormuz. In any case, drone attacks by Iran have forced the closure of Qatar's LNG export terminal at Ras Laffan, as well as the Saudi oil refinery at Ras Tanura. This is a foretaste of what could come as drones change the nature of modern warfare. The Trump administration is learning the hard way that swarms of cheap drones can quickly exhaust the U.S. arsenal of expensive air defense interceptors, a form of asymmetric attrition known as the firing gold at plastic. The U.S. is reportedly wasting Patriots worth $4 million, badly needed in other theaters, to shoot down $20,000 Shahed 136 drones. And finally, he says, it's astonishing that Trump precipitated this energy crisis so badly prepared at home. He promised to fill the U.S. strategic reserve right to the top when he took office, yet he failed to do so even when prices were low and the cycle was his friend. The reserve remains heavily depleted at 415 million barrels. The U.S. Energy Department says the minimum safe level in peacetime. I repeat, the minimum safe level in peacetime, not in time of war, is 500 million barrels. So it's a little bit, the reserve is currently at a level that is a little bit more than 80%. It's less than 85% of what is considered safe in peacetime. Man, oh man, oh man. This is one colossal screw up, really of potentially historic proportions. So you can see why I'm saying that it may ultimately be that the economic aspects of this war are going to be considerably more important, potentially, than what happens on the battlefield. Now, a commentator on a resistance channel pointed out that it could get much worse because the resistance could do huge economic damage to Israel's oil industry and gas industry by attacking its offshore oil facilities. I'm going to share that commentary with you. This, again, from a resistance channel, Geopolitics Prime. The Leviathan is a massive offshore field that Israel, along with Cyprus, controls. And the commenter, the analyst here says, Iran has already proven it's willing to hit U.S. assets. The strike on the NATO airbase at Akrotiri in Cyprus was a warning shot. Now the real target is energy as well. Cyprus and Israel sit atop massive natural gas reserves in the Eastern Mediterranean. By the way, this is basically stolen, much of this, from the Palestinians. It's situated in fields that are colorfully named like Leviathan, Tamar, and Aphrodite. And then it continues. As far back as 2017, Jeffrey Epstein was quietly probing the security of these very fields with Ehud Barak's team. Geopolitics Prime previously revealed the concern was prescient. Today, the threat is imminent. Here's why Iran could pull the trigger and why Cyprus and Israel should be on high alert. First, Israel's energy Achilles heel. Israel just shut down the Kaddish field amid rising tensions. A full strike on Leviathan and Tamar would knock out 71% of Israel's electricity. The country would grind to a halt, forced to burn expensive polluting diesel just to keep the lights on. That's not just an economic crisis, it's a strategic collapse. Number two, global shockwaves. Hit the Mediterranean and you don't just hit Tel Aviv, you rattle the world. If Iran simultaneously blocks the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil flows, and destroys Cypriot export terminals, the energy prices will go through the roof. So at the end of the day, I would suggest, my friends, that Israel and the United States are a long way, even now, with everything going off the rails, from the worst case scenario for them. This could get a lot worse for the genocidal war criminals who plunged this world into this entirely unnecessary and brazenly illegal war. Now, amidst all of this, there was an interesting communication from the office of the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, in the past couple of days. Carney put out a readout of a conversation that he had with the Highness of the United Arab Emirates, the President, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who is otherwise known as MBZ. You have MBS, the Saudi Crown Prince. Well, there's MBZ. And according to the readout, the Prime Minister expressed Canada's solidarity with UAE against Iranian missile and drone attacks on civilians across the Middle East, which both leaders condemned. No condemnation, of course, for Israel or the United States, or both, whichever one of them did it, mass murdering over 100 schoolgirls. The Prime Minister conveyed his gratitude to His Highness for his protection of the thousands of Canadians who live in the UAE. And here's the key language. Despite more than 2 decades of negotiations and diplomatic efforts, Iran has not dismantled its nuclear program, halted its enrichment activities, nor ended its support of terrorist proxies. Canada has long supported the imperative neutralizing this grave threat. Now, just stop there for a second. Canada is arming the greatest terrorist regime on God's green earth, Israel, and has been doing so throughout the time that it has been carrying out a genocide in occupied Palestine. The grave global threat, I would humbly suggest, is comprised of the United States and Israel, both of whom possess collectively enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world many times over, and both of whom are plainly genocidal. Whereas Iran is not committing any genocide. There's no court of law that has either adjudged it to be committing genocide or is entertaining a claim of genocide, an unadjudicated claim of genocide. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. And in fact, until Iran was attacked in this criminal war of aggression, it was not guilty of having invaded anybody. It was Iraq which invaded Iran in the 1980s, shortly after the Islamic Revolution. It is the United States and Israel that have repeatedly committed acts of aggression against Iran. For example, destroying Iran's embassy in Damascus earlier in the genocide. Killing Iran's top general, assassinating him in Iraq, and taking out other important officials from Iraq and Tehran after they enticed Qasem Soleimani to go to Baghdad with a promise to engage in peace negotiations. So, this is just disgusting 6 ways from Sunday that he's describing Iran as the problem. And there's nothing in here except this last sentence, this mealy-mouthed last sentence about respect for international law. All he says is Canada calls for a de-escalation and the immediate cessation of attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure, without specifying that, in fact, the United States and Israel are doing just that and have been from the very moment they launched this criminal war. They've been attacking civilians and civilian infrastructure, including the nuclear facilities of Iran, which are protected under international law. None of that gets mentioned in this or any other statement by this prime minister since this war began. Now, all of this, I have to tell you, struck me as a bit odd. And the reason why it struck me as a bit odd, and by the way, the reason why I know about this readout, the way it came to my attention is I subscribed to the statements of the Canadian Prime Minister's office. And so I check them all, see what they're about. And if they seem to be interesting, I'll read them carefully. So this popped into my inbox as part of my subscription to these news alerts. And at the time that I received this, I was aware through press reports that Carney was traveling in Asia. He was en route, I believe, from India, where he had just had an important state visit, negotiating new trade deals with India, and he was on his way to Australia. He was not in West Asia. He was nowhere in West Asia. I believe when he had this conversation, he was either en route to Australia from India, or he had actually arrived in Australia. And also, Canada is not anything remotely approximating a superpower. You could make a good case it's not even a middle power, but it certainly is not a major player in West Asia. Its military presence there and its economic presence there are really a pipsqueak. So the question that I had immediately when I read this is, why is the Prime Minister of Canada having this discussion with the President of the United Arab Emirates at this particular time, when the Prime Minister of Canada is nowhere near the region and is, in fact, either on the way or in Australia? So the first thing that popped into my mind when I thought, why is he having this conversation with Carney, is that the President of the United Arab Emirates was in a panic, and he was basically calling anybody and everybody who would listen, begging them to help him, the president, bring an end to this war. So to test my theory, I went to the website of this clown, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, or MBZ. And by the way, here he is, this man. He is reputed to be worth an estimated $30 billion. The Al Nahyan dynasty, of which he is the central figure, is described by Bloomberg as one of the wealthiest families in the world, with a collective net worth of in excess of $300 billion. And as I say, this man here stands at the center of that. So I went to his website, his presidential website, to see what he was doing on the day on which he spoke to Carney. And this is what I found. This is the first set of calls that he did on March 3rd. You'll see, starting in the upper left-hand corner, he spoke to the Australian Prime Minister, then the Canadian Prime Minister, the President of Timor-Leste, the Indonesian President, the North Macedonian Prime Minister, the Russian President, the Sierra Leone President, the Chad President, and then the Congolese President. And it keeps going. This is all March 3rd. And then over here, you see that he also spoke on that day to the President of South Africa, the President of the Central African Republic, the President of the Union of the Comoros, the Austrian Federal President, the Ugandan President, the Mozambique President, the Kosovo President, the Ukrainian President Zelensky, the Latvian Prime Minister. And by the way, I'm not going to show it to you in the interest of time, but if you look at what he was doing on the day before March 2nd, it's the same thing. It's like back-to-back calls with leaders from all around the world. Now, I don't know exactly what was said in those calls, obviously, and I don't think these readouts, I could go and check out all these readouts, but I think they're not going to be particularly informative. Obviously, they're going to be talking about the Iran war. And if he is, in fact, pleading with these people to put pressure on Trump to stop the war or on Iran. So, for example, he spoke to the president of Russia, who does have some pull with the Iranians. His government is allied with Iran and has probably provided some measure of military aid in the lead up to this war. So you're not going to get confirmation of what I'm saying from these readouts. I would think he's not going to want people to know that he's panicking. But my best guess is he's making all these calls and receiving all these calls because he is freaking out at what is being done to his dastardly little country. It's actually a Mossad operation masquerading as a country. And he's a Mossad agent, in my opinion, in substance. I'm not saying he's technically a Mossad agent, but he acts like a Mossad agent, does essentially whatever Israel wants and never utters a peep of criticism about them, despite Israel's heinous crimes. So I'm sure that he would love to see this thing come to an end as quickly as damn possible. And he should be panicking, frankly, as should all the other vassals of the United States in the region of West Asia, because if we've learned anything at all from the past 4 to 5 days, it is that the United States military is utterly incapable of protecting them from attacks by a state that has a military budget that is a tiny fraction, probably less than 5% of the US military budget. And that's an earthquake, folks. Discovering that this military behemoth with $1 trillion military budget, something like 2.5 times the size of the Chinese and Russian military budgets combined, that they can't protect you from Iran, that's going to cause a massive reevaluation of alliances and friendships, I would think, throughout the region. Now, this brings me back to Mark Carney. He too is panicking, albeit in a different way. You may recall that he rushed out a statement within hours of this criminal war of aggression being attacked. It was actually a joint statement with the Canadian Foreign Minister, Anita Anand, in which they expressed their unequivocal support for what Netanyahu and Trump were doing. Made no reference to international law, no reference to the fact that these two men don't give a damn about human rights, about international law, about the well-being of the Iranian people. That should be obvious to even the most uninformed person on the planet. Anybody with a functioning brain should understand this by now. He obviously, certainly he didn't express in that statement he issued on Saturday any concern about where this might all go, that it might go off the rails, do great damage to the global economy. It was just rah, rah, rah. We're in. We're not going to be involved militarily, but we fully support what you're doing. So while the prime minister was traveling abroad. And around the same time, he had this conversation with the president of the United Arab Emirates. He puts out another statement about this situation. And here he says something somewhat different. In the third paragraph, he says, we take this position with regret, a position regarding, the need to eliminate Iran's nuclear program and, not waiting passively for this to become a graver threat. He says, we take this position with regret because the current conflict is another example of the failure of the international order. Aha! He's harking back to his much ballyhooed speech at Davos, where he openly admitted that the rules-based order was a fraud and proposed to replace it with something else called the values-based order. And in explaining that, he said that from now on, Canada will apply the same standards to our allies and our rivals. Okay, that's what he said in Davos. So now he's hearkening back to that. And he goes on and says, so where do we go from here? With a rapidly spreading conflict and growing threats to civilian life, Canada reaffirms the international law binds all belligerents. Oh, you didn't say that the first time, Mr. Carney. Then he says that we condemn the strikes carried out by Iran on civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. But he doesn't condemn, by the way, any strikes on civilians or civilian infrastructure, not even the mass murder of over 100 Iranian schoolgirls. Not a peep about that. And then he says, we implore all parties, including the United States and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement. Canada calls for a rapid de-escalation of hostilities and prepared to assist in achieving this goal. Resolution of this crisis requires commitment to a broader political solution. What is going on here, folks, is very clear. He's walking back the unequivocal expression of support that he made for this criminal war of aggression within hours of its commencement. And he's walking it back partly because he's taken a lot of grief. I'm not going to get into it, but he's been criticized roundly in the press, including by a former Liberal minister, heavyweight in the Liberal Party, Lloyd Axworthy. But that's not, in my opinion, the main reason why he's walking back his rah-rah, pro-Trump, pro-Netanyahu, blow up Iran statement that he put out on Saturday. The main reason he's walking it back to a significant degree is because he sees that this is going off the rails. And in fact, as somebody who served as the governor of the Bank of Canada and then the governor of the Bank of England, he should be very much attuned to the damage that this is potentially going to do to capital markets and to the oil and gas markets and how that would impact the global economy. That's supposed to be precisely what a person who served in these capacities, and he was also, of course, a Goldman Sachs banker before he was a central banker, he should understand perfectly well what the emerging risks are. And as Ambrose Evans Pritchard explained in his article, citing experts in the oil and gas markets, we're talking here about historic problems in the oil and gas markets, something that will shake the foundations of the global economy. So Carney is now regretting that he put out that unequivocal statement, and he's trying to get on the record as quickly as possible his reservations or purported reservations about this, so that when the whole thing goes south and becomes a complete and utter economic calamity, not to mention a geostrategic defeat and a military embarrassment for the world's most expensive military, he wants to be on the record saying, well, I did actually express some reservations about this. This is a cover your ass statement. And the man is simply, he sees the writing on the wall, in my opinion. And that's why he put this statement out. It isn't because he has any genuine remorse over supporting these monsters, Netanyahu and Trump. I don't think, frankly, Mark Carney has any kind of a conscience, but he does care about his political future. Now, as it happens, the reason why I'm in Ottawa today, in this particular hotel that you find me in, or I find myself in, is that in this hotel, there is a 2-day conference going on, which is designed to bring together people from the military-industrial complex. It's called the Canadian Defence Associates Institute Conference. It's held once a year, and it's reputed to be the premier event for as I refer to them, merchants of death. They come here from all over the world to schmooze. Well, not all over the world, from the Western world, I should say. And I've already seen in the lobby many officers of NATO militaries. And this morning, the Canadian Foreign Minister, Anita Anand, who used to be a law professor at my alma mater, the University of Toronto, gave the keynote speech to open up the conference. And I was politely waiting for her. I'm not registered for this conference. I am staying in the hotel, but I can't get into the conference. They'll never allow me. They know who I am, and they'll never allow me even to have press accreditation. Even if I offer to pay the full fee, they won't allow me to participate in this conference because they know that I'm likely to ask, or I'm certain to ask, very uncomfortable questions. In any case, I waited for her at the in a public part of the hotel when she came out, and this is what happened.
Minister Anand, when are you going to stop arming Israel's genocidal regime? When are you going to stop arming the genocidal regime of Israel, Minister Anand? Do you believe that the attack on Iran is legal? Are you not a law professor who knows the UN Charter, Minister Anand? You have nothing to say about your criminality, Minister Anand?
As you can see, one of her aides was doing everything possible to block my camera. I really find that annoying. I mean, so childish. In any case, I'm going to end this report on a lighter note. I'm going to show you a video of two famous Russian pranksters who just pulled a fast one on that pathetic human being, the son of the Shah of Iran. His name is Reza Pahlavi. You may have heard of these pranksters. They are known as Lexis and Vovan. Lexis's real name is Alexei Stolyarov, and Vovan's real name is Vladimir Kuznetsov. Now, in their prank, I don't know how these guys do it, man. They've done this over and over again to Western politicians. They somehow convinced Pahlavi and his aides that they were representatives of the German government. And they set up a Zoom call with Pahlavi. And you're about to see the bulk of that Zoom call. And one of the pranksters, I don't know if it was Lexis or Vovan, they're as I said, they're posing as representatives of the German government. One of the pranksters slicks back his hair, his black hair, and dons a fake mustache that looks suspiciously like the mustache of Hitler. And he's introduced to Pahlavi as Adolf. And this is what happened.
Yes. Now, this is my, I think, fourth time in Munich in the last year.
Oh, Adolf was here. Okay.
Hello.
Good
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
afternoon.
I need to tell you that my father knew your father.
How come?
Really? Yes. And,
What was that? Was it, he has
Grandfather, Adolf's grandfather.
yes. My grandfather knew your father.
How interesting. Was he stationed in Iran in some capacity?
Yes,
or?
he was. He served in German army, and he was as an agent in Tehran.
I don't know about you, but these two guys have very distinctive Russian accents, it seems to me. They don't sound at all like German accents, but Pahlavi apparently thinks they're German.
In 40s.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Good to know.
Okay, let's start. I'm glad to welcome you today. And our friend, President Weber, told us about a great conversation with you. So we would like to discuss some details of our partnership and also your personal meeting with the Chancellor, I think on Sunday, if it's okay for you.
Well, definitely, I would very much appreciate that opportunity. But we are very grateful and thankful for the strong position that Chancellor Merz has taken. I think it's really something that we were hoping all these years, that there'll be a much tougher stance by European governments. And I'm glad that your country is taking the lead in being very clear on the subject, particularly when it comes to the regime's legitimacy, which was always an issue.
You know,
And
I had a discussion with Chancellor Merz today, and we discussed that we will talk to you. And his position now, he is open to join the game. So I need to assure you that Germany army is ready to launch military actions in Iran now. You know, we have Taurus missiles, so our intelligence is ready to start bombing Tehran.
Just look at this guy looking like Adolf Hitler saying we're going to bomb Tehran with our Taurus missiles. And this guy wants to be the leader of Iran. He's just told that the Germans want to bomb Tehran, the capital of the country.
Okay, well, the more we have as part of this coalition vis-à-vis the regime, the better. In fact, so it doesn't isolate just the Israelis and the Americans in this. That's certainly a welcome element for us to have more people joining in this crusade. And
oh my God, he used the word crusade. Wow. You would have thought that this man would at least have some sensitivity about the historical significance of that word to the Muslim population of Iran. But this quite apart from that, he's like, yeah, let's bring all the war criminals to this party. Let's have one big war criminal party.
And I'm glad if Germany is taking such a strong stance. I hope that others would follow suit.
I talked to Chancellor Merz, so he is ready to launch military operation now. So what do you think? If we start military operation, are you ready to come then to Tehran and lead new government?
Yes, at least what we've been talking to the Americans and the Israelis about is the fact that, look, as far as IRGC is concerned, or any of the instances that is part of the, force de frappe, as the French will say, including the intelligence ministry and so on and so forth, that has to be neutralized for people to actually have a chance to go back to the streets and ultimately take over whatever we need to take over. In the meantime, we're working the process of getting more and more defectors on our side. And a lot of them come from the military paramilitary groups, but also from the civil bureaucracy, in the sense that the minute the regime ultimately collapses, we are ready to step in and fill the vacuum. For that, I haven't.
I mean, what do you think about Israel position now? So
obviously, Israel is definitely on board in terms of knowing that there's an existential threat to them so long as this regime continues to exist. In fact, I don't know if you remember my
this clown is saying that it's Israel, the party that has the nukes, is existentially threatened by the country he wants to lead, which doesn't have nukes. Excuse me?
2 years ago to Israel, where I spoke directly with Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Herzog. So we have a very good dialogue with them, and I think there's a lot of traction about this in terms of how it's perceived from the point of view of the Iranian people. Every demonstration you would see of the last couple of years, you often see the Israeli flag right next to the Iranian national flag.
Okay, good. So I hope that we can arrange a meeting with Chancellor, and of course, it's very important for him to know you, to meet in person. It's much better than just discuss on this. What do you think? People who were under bombarding of Israel, would they support that politics?
Sir, I'm so sorry. The Prince is just getting a phone call. We just need about 3 minutes to take the call. We'll just put it on pause and be right back, if it's okay.
In the meantime, maybe...
yeah.
Now, it's too bad that it was ended there. That was the end of it, actually. At least that was the end of the interview of Pahlavi. And I think what happened was his aide suddenly realized that this whole thing stunk and that it wasn't real. This was a prank or something else was going on, some kind of espionage operation. And so he ended the call, claiming that there was another call that had to be taken. Sadly, he ended it right at the moment when he asked the most telling question, Adolf, namely, what do you think people who are being bombed by Israel will do? Will they support you? We'll never know what he would have said in answer to that question. But we want to thank the comrades, our Russian comrades, for their most excellent work in exposing this fraudster for what he is. Before I sign off, I actually had interaction about an hour ago with people in the Iranian diaspora who support this piece of refuse and the Netanyahu regime, because we were holding a protest in front of this hotel against these merchants of death. And they came with a counter protest, and the Israeli flags and the monarchic flag of Iran were flying side by side, and they were hurling insults at us as we were denouncing the criminal war of aggression against Iran. How any Iranian, in particular at this moment in human history, whatever their view of the government of Iran may be, could possibly align themselves with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, that is a mystery to me. And as I've said before, I have nothing but loathing and contempt for those people. This is Dimitri Lascaris signing off from Ottawa, Canada on March 4th, 2026.